I will sing of steadfast love and justice. To you, O Lord, I will make music. I will ponder the way that is blameless. Oh, when will you come to me? I will walk with integrity of heart within my house. I will not set before my eyes anything that is worthless. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not cling to me. A perverse heart shall be far from me. I will know nothing of evil. Whoever slanders his neighbor secretly, I will destroy. Whoever has a haughty look and an arrogant heart, I will not endure. I will look with favor on the faithful in the land, that they may dwell with me. He who walks in the way that is blameless shall minister to me. No one who practices deceit shall dwell in my house. No one who utters lies shall continue before my eyes. Morning by morning I will destroy all the wicked in the land, cutting off all the evildoers from the city of the Lord. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks, Laurel. It is really good to be together in one service. This is my first day to be in one service, so to feel this, I know it's a little tight, but it's worth it, right? So think of think of a vacation road trip where you're all packed into the vehicle together, but Chevy Chase is not driving. All right, I know Novel's going to say something to me about that. So, Jesus is driving. And thank you for putting a name tag on. Take a minute and meet someone this week and next that you have not met before. This is so good.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thanks for participating.
It's amazing. All right. Got it. Now we're all together. All right. That was nicely done. Really nicely done. Today we are in Psalm 101. Our annual rhythm includes Summer in the Psalms, and I love this time of year. What a solid introduction last Sunday. Tom, thank you for doing that for us and for ministering the word to us. And if you weren't here or you have not yet listened to it, please take a minute, at least listen to the first 20, 22 minutes of it, where he's making a case for why the church needs the Psalms, why we as individuals need the Psalms. So if you haven't listened to that, I would strongly encourage that. And then you can listen to the second 20 minutes of it on the next ride. That's Psalm 100, and you should do both of those parts. Today I want you to imagine something with me. Step into the imagination station. Do you remember this from Adventures in Odyssey? Anybody know the Adventures in Odyssey imagination station? All right, so I want you to get in and go somewhere in your mind. Imagine some things with me. Imagine that gossip no longer tastes good when it comes out of your mouth. Or lying, or deceiving, or sarcasm. Or imagine somebody cuts you off in traffic and your normal road rage reaction is to boil inside. But it doesn't happen. Imagine for a minute life without Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Thank you, Jesus. No, seriously, because the ups and downs of social media are real. Imagine emotional stability and wholeness. Imagine your neighbor gets a fully loaded 2024 F-150 pick-em-up truck. And your first thought is not, where's mine? Like imagine that could happen. Let me get a little more personal and maybe even more serious. Imagine that pornography no longer attracts you. It actually repulses you, maybe like looking at an open wound. Imagine the deep resentment that you've had and you've been carrying for your whole life toward a family member, mother, father, sibling. You wake up one morning and you look for that resentment in your heart because that's what you do every day, and it's gone. Imagine, in other words, imagine your life, not someone else's, is increasingly conformed to the image of God. Imagine that your life is pleasing to God and even satisfying to your own soul, and you can't get enough of it. Imagine that God's character and goodness and beauty remake you, reshape you, and imagine what it would be like to be increasingly like Jesus every day of your life. I want to talk today, I want you to think with me about a distinctly Christian imagination. What it would be like to have a distinctly Christian imagination. The Psalms invite us to do this. The Psalms invite us to reimagine life. The Psalms are one long, I think you could say this, the Psalms are one long exercise in Christian imagination. As you read, meditate on, sing, and pray the Psalms, which we learned about last week, the importance of that. As you read the Scriptures, meditate on them, contemplate them, push them down into your heart and soul, and sing them and pray them. As you sing and pray the Word of God, the Spirit of God is pleased to make you more and more like the Son of God. That's how the Word of God works, and especially the Psalms. Imagine, first of all, point number one, a godly way of life. Let me show you where this is coming from. Verse 2. Look at verse 2, Psalm 101, verse 2. Do you see it there? I will ponder, mark that word. I will ponder. Verse 2, Psalm 101, I will ponder. I will contemplate. I will imagine. I will turn over in my heart and mind again and again. I will imagine and dream about what it would be like to live a godly life, a life of integrity, a life of wholeness with no cracks in it. And then verse 2 says, oh, when will you come to me? Now that's an interesting expression. You kind of have to choose, what does he mean? And I think I'm following Robert Alter on his reading. I think it's better rendered, oh, when will it come to me? That is to say, if that's what's happening in David's mind, he's contemplating, envisioning, imagining this godly way of life, and his longing for God and wisdom and a godly life. It's like he's saying, I can see it out there, I can imagine it, it's part of my vision, but man, when will it come to me? When will it arrive? When will I live that way? I think that's what he's saying. When will it be mine? Haven't you, as a believer, thought for years, when will this come to me? That's why also I think verse 1 says what it says. I will sing. I will make music. Because singing and making music is born out of the imagination. By God's design. Oh, it's so good. It was so good to hear you singing. In fact, I opened the little secret doors back there so we could hear it right into the baptistry area. It was so good to hear you singing this morning. Because when you're singing, God designed you to express your heart in such a way that you're imagining, you're envisioning, you're praising, you're seeing him for who he is. And you were made to do this. You were made to sing. And every song is written out of the imagination. Every song is born out of the imagination. For better or for worse, right? Whether it's Bob Dylan or AC/DC, Joni Mitchell or Taylor Swift. Every song is born out of the imagination. And David, the sweet psalmist of Israel, is imagining what it would be like for his heart to be fully captured by God. Fully captured by God. So he says, I will sing of the steadfast love and justice of God. And those are two summary attributes of God that he wants in verse 1 to put on the table. He wants to sing of the justice, he wants to sing first of the love of God, the chesed of God. It can be translated loyalty, loving kindness, mercy, love. What else? It's got a huge translation word group in the Old Testament. It's like 250 times in the Old Testament, and very rarely is it translated the same way. It's this constellation of words like love and loyalty and kindness and mercy. David says, I want to sing about the love of God. And then, so that's the vertical dimension. Then horizontally, he says, I want to sing about the justice of God. The justice of God, how people treat one another matters. How I treat people, David is saying in his own song. How I treat people matters. How those in authority respond to the mistreatment of people under their watch. David is singing both about the vertical dimension of worship and the horizontal dimension of worship. So it could be that David is thinking in verse 1 of himself as the king in this psalm. That would make sense. A king who loves his people and wants justice among his people. But I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't read it that way. I don't think this psalm is a royal psalm. I'm following John Sailhammer in this, and he's suggesting that this is not primarily a royal psalm. It's primarily a wisdom psalm, a personal devotion psalm, where David is constantly thinking about his own life before the Lord. Right? And you can see that repeatedly through the song. I will, I will, I will, I will, I am, I will, over and over, he says. So then in the words of Jesus, it would go like this. You should love the Lord your God with all of your heart and soul and mind and strength. And then you should do what? Love your neighbor as yourself. Love and justice. Loving God and loving your neighbor. That's what David is singing about. And he's not just singing about it in terms of his responsibility as king. He's working way upstream. It is going to flow out into his house. He'll say house a couple times in the psalm. And then he'll say the city of God at the end of the psalm. And so there is, as one commentator wrote, an oblique reference to his royal responsibilities. But that's not the primary point of the psalm. It's first about his own personal devotion and walk with God. So David is first imagining a life that is pleasing to God. I think you should start there. Start with David and imagine you are living a life, and I'm not talking about this sort of modern, hipster, manifest your life. Like, I'm not talking about manifest your life. Speak it into being. I'm not talking about that. That's got no basis in the scriptures. Don't use the language of, be careful when you use the language of, oh man, you manifested that, we got a reservation. You know, don't think that way as a Christian. Like you made that happen. That's not what I'm talking about. So if you're thinking Pete means you should imagine so you can manifest something in a new age sort of spiritual way, that is not what we're talking about. Are you with me? Imagine what it would be like to live a life that's pleasing to God. Second point. David will not stop there, though. He doesn't want to just dream about it, and I do think it's probably true that many of us kind of stop there. He walks in it. Look at this second point, verse 2. The second half of verse 2 says, I will walk. Circle it, underline it, mark that. I will walk. I will activate the imagination. I will do something with it. I will walk in the way. In biblical times, walking was the most common form of transportation you could have or use. You would walk everywhere in biblical times. You would take short walks. You would take very long walks. And so It made for a perfect analogy for the biblical writers, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, to describe how spiritual growth works. Spiritual growth works in the life of a believer like a walk, not a run, but a walk. And that's a really significant concept in the Christian life. Learning what it means to walk in the way or to walk with God. Enoch walked with God. God said to Abraham, walk before me and be blameless. Psalm 1. Many of you have memorized Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way, the walkway, the pathway of sinners. Or Micah 6:8. He has told you, O man, what is good. Right? Remember this? He has told you what is good and what the Lord requires of you. To do justice, there it is again. To love kindness, there is chesed again, loving kindness. And to walk humbly with your God. There are three aspects. Let me just try to sketch something out for you here. So when you think about walking with God as an analogy for the Christian life, there are three aspects of walk, physically walking, that correspond to spiritual growth. Let me just hit you with those briefly. So why is walk being used? Because it describes relationship, direction, and progress. If you walk with someone physically down a pathway or on a sidewalk or in a neighborhood or at the mall, if you walk with someone, you will often have to do what? Slow down. The person you're walking with is not walking at your pace. Has this ever happened to you? When you slow down to walk with someone, what are you doing? You're fostering the relationship. As you slow down to walk with them, you're saying, I want to stay with you, right? I want to walk with you. I want to be with you. I want to be present with you. That's exactly what's being described in walking with the Lord. You are cultivating relationship. Secondly, there's this sense of direction. Anytime you're walking, you're always moving. You have to move in a direction. If you're not moving in a direction, you're not walking, right? Same thing is true spiritually. You're constantly making choices about a virtuous way of life. And that you'll see in the Proverbs and the Psalms repeatedly. So you're constantly walking and choosing and moving in a virtuous way or a less than virtuous way. Very rarely do you find in the scriptures some sort of neutral place, right? So there's relationship, there's direction, and then the third element is progress. Walking signifies progress. If you're walking, you're making progress, steady progress over time. There's a book called The 3 Mile an Hour God. Have you heard about this? It's an older book, 3 Mile an Hour God, what it would be like to walk with Jesus, 3 miles an hour. It's about the walking pace of somebody going somewhere. Walking in a direction, making progress. Well, if you're walking with God, you're going to mature spiritually. One of the reasons some of you are really stagnant spiritually is that you're not moving. And you think maybe it should just happen to you. It's not just going to happen to you. You will need to walk with the Lord. Look at verse 2 again. David says, I will walk with integrity. I will choose a virtuous life. I will walk in that way. I will walk with integrity of heart in my house. Go down to verse 6. He who walks in the same way, he who walks in a godliness and blamelessness, I'm going to let him minister to me. I'm going to let him walk with me. He who walks. So we as believers are called to engage and to walk with God. One of our favorite resources, if you don't have this or have never been exposed to the idea of the Christian walk, is a book called The Walk. And it's an introduction to discipleship. And we use it in our disciple pairings. We use it in some small group contexts. I would strongly encourage you to think about a resource You come up out of the waters of baptism like Bob. Bob is already in a one-on-one disciple pairing with another one of our members, and they're studying through the walk. And you come up out of the waters of baptism, and you are on the walk. It's like, game on, let's go do this. But, okay, you know this to be true. Walking in this world that is broken and fallen is not easy. It's hard. Because sin is real. So that's point number 3. David, knowing this, says it's not enough to imagine godliness. It's not even enough to choose to walk with God, which you should do with all your energy. But you will also need to do a third thing, and that is settle in your heart and mind, resolve that you will fight sin. Verses 3 and 4. And so the movement in verses 3 and 4 takes us to this next step. David says, notice this, verse 3, I want to point out the resolve language. I will, I hate, I will. I mean, just really strong language and a certain commitment. I will not, he says, verse 3. I hate, verse 3. I will know nothing of evil, verse 4. You just feel the resolve language. All right, with that resolve language on the table, let me give you 4 practical ways to fight sin. So another short list. I'm going to hit you with a short list. 4 practical ways to fight sin. Let me just roll these out. First, remove the temptation. That's in verse 3. Look at verse 3. Remove the temptation. I will not set before my eyes anything that is, some translations have vile, worthless, the ESV, ugly, perverse, ungodly. I will not set before my eyes these things, because if I let myself look at these things, I'll just like Eve and Adam, it won't be long, and after I'm looking, I'll be what? I'll be eating. I'll be partaking. So Spurgeon says, look, if it's pleasing to her eyes, then her heart begins to want it. Yeah, if it fascinates your eyes, if it's constantly in front of you, of course you're going to give yourself to it. So remove the temptation. Vicky, for a long time, had this verse, Psalm 101, verse 3, taped on the bottom of our television set. You should try that sometime. Parents, you can try to filter out all the stuff that's coming through the router at your house, and you can put all the software programs in place. But if we don't get our kids to a place where the filter is deeper than the router, right? The filter's in here. The filter's right here. I won't set this before my eyes. So remove the temptation. Take it seriously. Walk with God and remove the temptation that you know is going to cause you to sin. David says, I will not set before my eyes anything that's going to lead me in that direction. Secondly, distance yourself from your own heart. This is not something you're going to hear the world say to you. But this is what the gospel says. Distance yourself from your own heart. Look at verse 4. A perverse heart shall be far from me. If verse 4 stood alone, I think if verse 4 stood alone, you might say that he has the hearts of other people in mind. But it doesn't stand alone. And David is talking in this psalm constantly about the ugliness, perversion, and twistedness of every human heart, including his own heart. I think David is purposefully not said exactly who he's talking about, because he's talking about both himself and others. Like, he's intentionally ambiguous. He doesn't identify the heart because he knows that every single human heart has the potential to do this, including his own. So you have to come to a place, along with David, I think, of distancing yourself from your own heart. That is the old man and the new man. If you're a believer and you have a new heart in Jesus, you got to take your new heart that's in Jesus and you got to move it over here and distance yourself from your old heart. Distance yourself from your old ungodly desires. Do you remember Proverbs 4:23? Famous verse. 4:23, Proverbs. Guard your heart with all vigilance or diligence. You and I have a responsibility to guard our own hearts. Guard your heart with all vigilance, with all diligence, for from it flows the springs of your life. Well, it would be wrong to assume that you're guarding your heart from just stuff coming in from the outside. In the biblical story, you're not just guarding your heart against the enemy that's out there. You're even going to guard your heart from yourself. Third, don't let sin cling to you. See if you can find that in verse 3. One way to render the second half of verse 3 is, I hate sinning. I hate the work of sin that I do. I hate sinning. The ESV reads, I hate the work of those who sin. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not cling to me. It might be a better rendering to have it read, I hate sinning. I hate it when I commit sin, the work of sin. It shall not, no question about the second half of the verse, right? That's very clear. It shall not cling to me. That's good imagery. Like, I'm not going to let my sin stick to me. I was working in the yard last week and picked up, or sometime recently, was it last week? Where were we last week? So I was working in the yard not long ago, and I picked up a friend, actually the enemy, picked up a tick. And so I'll just say it was over here. Okay? And so, because we're in church, so I picked up a tick, and you know, if a mosquito gets on you, you can kill him and move him all in once, boom, he's gone, right? You can't do that with a tick. Why can't you do that with a tick? Well, because a tick has a very sophisticated anatomy. You should look it up. It'll gross you out if we do it this morning. But he has hooks, layers and layers of hooks in his mouth, so that when he gets in, you can't pull him out. And he's been designed that way. Sin, listen to this, sin has a very sophisticated anatomy. You don't want to mess with it. You got to take it seriously. It comes with Lyme's disease and everything else. You need to get it out. Then you might need help getting it out. Don't let, some of you are messing around with sin in a way that, like, you're letting it hang around, and it's clinging to you. And it is sucking the life out of you, but you're not admitting it. Here's the fourth thing you should do, and I won't spend much time here because I got to get to number 4. But the fourth subpoint, I'll let you dig in on verses 5 and 8. Look at silence. Silence would be a way to render destroy. So David might be saying, whoever slanders his neighbor secretly, I will destroy. He could also mean, I will silence. I will silence, again, verse 8, I will silence ungodly influences. So I just, by way of application, want to say to you, you should make an effort to fight sin by silencing ungodly influences in your life. Don't assume they're not coming in. You're going to need to silence those devices, silence those inputs, silence those ungodly influences. All right, that's the subpoints on how to fight sin. Let me close with this. Number 4. So you're imagining what it would look like to walk with God according to the gospel, according to the scriptures, according to God's character. You're walking, you choose to walk and activate and walk in the way. You resolve to fight sin along the way. You take it seriously. And then number 4, walk with those who walk with God. Something you should know about our church. If you're a first-time guest or you're considering here as a church membership and being part of what the Lord's doing here, something you should know about our church is that we strongly believe that walking closely together is essential to Christianity. That it's not peripheral. That it's not, maybe we'll do that. No. We strongly believe that walking closely together with other disciples is essential to Christianity. This is important for me to say because there is a brand of Christianity that says, I don't need the church. I can do this by myself. The church is full of hypocrites anyway. That's true. Welcome to the world. But I don't need the church. I can do this by myself. No, you can't. You can't do this by yourself. And besides, it's not biblical Christianity to say that you could do it by yourself. There's just no Lone Ranger Christianity in the New Testament. You say, well, what about the prophets? Oh man, please don't. The prophets don't. Isaiah is not who Isaiah was, who Jeremiah was, who Ezekiel was, is not licensed for me to live the Lone Ranger Christian life. Okay, so it's just not in the scriptures. Listen to verse 6. This is what you find in the scriptures again and again. Look at verse 6. I will look with favor on the faithful in the land, that they may dwell with me. Notice how important it is to David to have godly influences close into him, all right? This is why people being close to you in the life, in the body of the church, in a discipleship pairing, in a small group, in a Bible study class that needs to go way beyond a Sunday morning interaction, because I want godly people to dwell with me, to rub shoulders with me, to change the tone of my anger, to strengthen my grace and mercy, to help me model patience. I need godly people around me that they might dwell with me, David says. I will look with favor on the faithful, those who are faithful to God, that they might dwell with me. And then he doubles down on it. Look at the end of verse 6. He who walks in the way, right? This is the way. Walk in the way. Walk with God. He who walks in the way, I'm going to let him minister to me. Now, that's a really important thing, especially because there are many who live in an older generation who are so tough and so self-made that we minister to others, but we don't let anybody minister to us. Are you with me? You can't do that. You need to let people minister to you in your need and in your brokenness. I need others to walk in the way. They will minister to me. I need them to walk with me, because as I walk down, as you walk down the adventure trail of life, inevitably you're gonna misstep. You're gonna trip over a small root or a big root, and you might even face plant on a trail. And you'd love for that to have happened alone, so nobody saw you fall. But you sure would love help getting up. And David says, look, I want to walk with God by letting those who walk with God walk with me. I want to encourage you to lean hard into this. I know it because it's in my heart, it's in your heart. It's just in the human condition. We resist help. Like, we don't want to be helped. We don't want people to minister to us. When you say you don't want others to have to help you, I want you to hear this. You are saying, I don't want anyone else discipling me or walking with me. And that can't be what you mean. So, as a church, we want to lean into discipleship, which means we walk with those who walk with God. And if you're wanting more of that, you should, like David, take the initiative and even say, man, I need help with this. Would you connect me with somebody? Come to a small group. Come to one of the pastors and ask to be invested in by a discipleship pairing. We'll help set that up. Come to a Bible study class on Sunday morning. Meet people. Open up yourself to this. Start saying, like David, I will look on the faithful with favor, and I will let them into my life. I will let other people into my life that I might become more godly. Imagine a godly way of life.